Hey, Frank, what's on your mind today?
Good afternoon, guys. Dr. Anders, it's a pleasure and an honor to speak with you.
Thank you.
I was brought up an LCMS Lutheran. I've since come to realize that the true church, that's not the true church. That the Reformation was based on a false premise of sola scriptura, and I'm very interested in converting to Catholicism or Orthodoxy. My one big question, my one big stumbling block is why in the Roman Church you only receive the host and not the wine. My Orthodox friends tell me that's almost sinister, and that Jesus said that take and eat my flesh, take and drink my blood. He didn't say that take and eat my flesh, within it contains blood. And this is the one big question that I have, is why in the Roman Church we only receive the host.
Okay, I got a lot to say on this. Let me ask you a question. Did Jesus ever command laity to receive Holy Communion under either kind?
I don't know. No, he just says apostles, right?
That's right, of course. So the only time Christ ever immediately gives this command is to the apostles as he ordains them priests. And we have no rubrics in the Bible that would describe this, right? Beyond the fact that we know that the privilege was abused by laity in Corinth, and St. Paul calls out people who were receiving Holy Communion in an unworthy manner and getting drunk on the precious blood and bringing death and wreck and ruin upon themselves, right? But Christ himself doesn't prescribe this to the laity. And so that's one thing I will say. Another thing I'm going to say is that if you are attracted to Eastern liturgical practice, you say, I like the way those Byzantines go to communion. I kind of groove with that. Well, you can become an Eastern Rite Catholic. So if there's something about the Eastern patrimony, spirituality, liturgy, theology that you find attractive, you can join a Byzantine Catholic Church, a Melkite Catholic Church, a Ruthenian Catholic Church, a Ukrainian Catholic Church, a Maronite Catholic Church, a Syrian Catholic Church. I mean, need I go on? There's about 22 of them, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of Eastern Catholic churches that follow Eastern liturgy and spirituality and theology, and they're fully Catholic, right? So in your neighborhood, you just look up, Byzantine Catholic Church or Eastern Catholic Church, see or you can call the diocese and ask, or where are the Eastern Rite Catholic parishes in this neighborhood, and you can go find one and see if that's what you're looking for, and you can become Catholic and be in union with the Universal Church and the Pope, but you can still satisfy that interest that you have in that particular spirituality or liturgical practice. So you don't have to go Orthodox. You don't have to reject the primacy of the Pope in order to follow that inclination. And I've got friends that have done that. They converted from Protestantism to Catholicism, but instead of becoming Roman Rite, they just went straight over and became Eastern Rite Catholics. Mm-hmm. So the real issue, now why, but that doesn't get to your question. Why would you not receive in both kinds in the Catholic Church, in the Latin Rite Catholic Church? First of all, sometimes we do. And in the parish that I go to, communion of both kinds is always available to the laity. And so if that's also of interest to you, if you want to be a Latin Rite Catholic and you want to receive in both kinds, you find a parish where it's always available in both kinds. Because plenty of parishes, it's available in both kinds. Like mine, every week, every Sunday, it's always available in both kinds. But why would it be okay? Why would it be okay to only receive in one kind? Let's delve for a moment into the theology of the Eucharist, if you will permit me. And as you know, this was an issue in the Reformation as well, right? But prior to Luther, the Bohemians, and Luther was aware of the Bohemians, the Hussites, the Utraquists, those who demanded communion in both kinds, were agitated on this issue. So it was familiar to Luther. Mm-hmm. The Eucharist is two things. All the other sacraments are one thing. The Eucharist alone is two things. It is a sacrament, and it is a sacrifice. It is a sacrament and a sacrifice. As a sacrifice, it's something offered to God. As a sacrament, it's something that God offers to us. It's both things. And what it signifies is a little bit different under each of those two descriptions. So as a sacrament, John chapter 6 talks about this. Whoever eats my flesh, drinks my blood, has life. All right? It is a testament to, and it effects the actual saving presence of Christ within us. As I feed on the body and blood of Christ, I receive the supernatural nourishment of his flesh and blood, which are for me salvation. The medicine of immortality, St. Ignatius of Antioch calls it. Now, when I receive the sacred host, do I receive that body and blood? Yes, I do. I certainly do. I receive the whole Christ under the species of the host. Whole thing. I receive his body and blood in the host. Or are you telling me, and I know you're not telling me this, that when the priest consecrates the host, he's just drained all of Jesus' blood out of his body and put it over there in the chalice? Absolutely not. That would be to kill Jesus. That would be to immolate him again, literally. But he only dies once on Calvary. When the priest consecrates the host, he doesn't drain Christ of his blood like some sacerdotal vampire. He leaves Christ whole and entire. And Christ whole and entire comes to me in the sacred host, and I receive the entirety. And as a sacrament, it is a sign of that presence with me, and I get the whole thing, the whole Christ, however I commune, whether in one kind or both. So I lose nothing.
Okay.
I lose nothing in my communion if I receive only in one kind. So why then would Christ give me the Eucharist in two kinds? Why body and blood? Right? I mean, he could have designated any symbol and said, this stands for my corporeal presence.
Mm-hmm.
Why bread and wine? Now we have to consider the Eucharist as sacrifice. As sacrifice, the death of Christ is represented to me. It is put on display before me through the symbols of body and blood presented in a state of separation. Body over here, blood over there. Bread over here, wine over there. You separate body from blood, you've got death. Is Jesus actually separated? No. I got the whole Christ in the host, I got the whole Christ in the chalice. But the signs, and the Eucharist is not only a sign, but it is not less than a sign. It is a sign that has efficacy to it.
Mm-hmm.
The sign is of Christ presented in a state of immolation, the death of Jesus, because to sacrifice something involves immolation, right? The destruction of the victim. And in the Eucharist, Christ is not destroyed or immolated or killed, but his death is represented through the double consecration of bread and wine. That's why there are two kinds. And then that same victim who died on Calvary is present. The same priest who offered it is present. For the same reason, the redemption of the world is present. And in that way, the sacrifice of Calvary is present to me through the same victim, the same priest, and the same intent. And that same offering is then offered to God the Father in reparation for the sins of the world in the sacrifice of the Mass. The culmination of which, and the completion of that oblation, is my communion, which is a separate thing. So the theology underlying communion and sacrifice, one kind, two kinds, gets into the justification of communion in one kind. Now, there's a practical reason for communing in one kind, and that is the avoidance of scandal, right? Lest somebody spill the precious blood, which has unfortunately happened.
Mm-hmm.
Or, as in the case of Corinth, somebody gorges the precious blood, became inebriated or something. There's all kinds of things that can happen handling the sacred vessels, and particularly the chalice, because of the nature of the element being liquid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the nature of the accidents, I should say, being liquid. So there you go. That's the position.